Daud Hercules replaced its old boiler and generator setup with a gas turbine and waste heat recovery setup. Lucky Cement is setting up 2 waste heat recovery projects at its plants. It is also setting up a fossil fuel switch plant which is use agricultural waste to replace coal. अच्छा, अब ये beautiful projects आते हैं unfortunately. These are projects, WAPDA projects, which I was referring to earlier. These are projects which are very difficult to register because these guys in their PC1 documentation did not include carbon credits as an instrumental fact of making the project financially viable. If such documentation, such financial closure documentation lacks this proof, it's very difficult for you to register. We're still trying, but it becomes more and more difficult. This gives you an idea about, what do projects look like. Let me just show you before I close my session just exactly what you have to do when something like this comes to you for review as an expert. This is a very interesting image. It's a very fine line between showing that the project is economically not viable and showing that it is hugely viable. You have to do that very carefully. You have to set up an internal hurdle rate for that company. This can be Pakistan's commercial lending rate or an established rate that the company has. Masalan, public companies, as in Government of Pakistan companies, use a World Bank standard hurdle rate, and they show that this project उस hurdle rate से ऊपर जाता है. Be very careful to establish this for your clients. Have an internal hurdle rate set up, and then show that the projects are not crossing that hurdle rate without carbon credit income. You have to ensure that the project would not have been implemented if it had not been for the CDM income. इसके लिए आपको एक barrier analysis करना पड़ेगा. It would show that no other company in Pakistan is doing something like this. Or you would have to show a financial consideration that, look, in my financials, this project is not very lucrative. That's why I'm not setting it up. We would then come in and look at the project and do a baseline estimation. What is the baseline carbon emission had this project not been set up? For instance, if it's Maple Leaf Cement, if they don't set this up, what is the total amount of electricity that they import from the grid or they produce with the generator? वो आपकी baseline बन गई. Let's say the baseline emissions are approximately 60,000 tons of carbon dioxide per year. Now, after they set up the waste heat recovery system, they only need to run the generators for a certain amount of time, which gives them 10,000 carbon emissions. That's 60,000 minus the 10,000, the 50,000 difference is the carbon credit or CER, carbon emission reduction, that project generates. And we will help the client monetize that. You register the project by applying certain approved methodologies, which are given by the United Nations. The documentation is prepared, and a third-party validator like TÜV-SÜD, TÜV-NORD, Bureau Veritas, DNV, companies like these are hired to come and inspect the project and see if the project is actually true, because a lot of people try and make up projects. Actually, cheez nahi hoti, wo story banayi hoti hai puri. So these validators are very strict to come and see whether the project exists on ground, whether it is compliant with the methodology, and it is financially not viable. If there is proof, for instance, कि इसी तरह के 25 और project लगे हुए हैं without carbon credits, that's very detrimental. So this validator comes and inspects that, and then we help the validator answer all of their questions. The project is then submitted to the United Nations. The whole process takes about 2 years. And then once the project is registered, you can register it for a period of 7 years, renewable for 2 more schemes of 7 years, which is 21 years, or a one-time registration of 10 years. So those are the 2 income streams, 21 years, 7 years guaranteed, and then baki 14 saal on a risk basis, or 10 years guaranteed. This is just some example of different methodologies for different industries. But I think that's about it. If anybody has any questions, I'm available. Thank you.
I would like to understand the cost and revenue model of the CDM, the project. If any developed nation like Brazil invest in a developing country in any CDM project like Pakistan, then there is an outflow of economic benefit from the developed country like the project cost. And when the GHG emission level is reduced in the developing country, then they will purchase the carbon credits from the developing countries. That's against the outflow of economic benefit from the developed country. So what is the outflow of economic benefit from the developing country like Pakistan? So they are getting the dual benefit. Further, they are improving their structure. They are reducing the GHG emission level. And second, that they are purchasing the carbon credits. So they are benefiting by both ways, revenue. So what is the cost of the developing country? My first question. My second question is.
मैं आपका पहला question समझा नहीं हूँ actually.
Actually, when a developed country invest in a developing country,
They're not investing, no. So Maple Leaf Cement will put in the money, the $20 million to set up the waste heat recovery plant totally by themselves. Nobody will assist them in that. And then once the project is registered and they get these, let's say 50,000 credits per year, they are free to sell it to anyone. It doesn't have to be the Germans every time. It can be the Germans for the first year, the French for the second year, the Japanese the third year. So the developing country is investing in clean power themselves and monetizing that through the carbon emission scheme. The developing country is helping the developed country is helping the developing country to set up clean projects. Ab iska, the rationale behind it is the whole world shares the same air. And if you have carbon emissions happening in this part of the world, they also affect global warming levels somewhere else, which is different for water. Water is going to be the next problem that the world faces. Us case ke andar, water is more regional. Aapka second question? Second
question is, the Kyoto Protocol is ending by the end of 2012.
Yeah.
What would happen then?
Nobody knows.
तो फिर ये सारे प्रोजेक्ट जो अभी रजिस्टर हुए हैं,
they are not at risk. A project which is registered before Kyoto will still be able to sell its credits. I skipped through a few slides because I saw some people were a little too tired, so I tried to bore you less. But let me just show you very quickly a slide about demand and supply. Right now, Kyoto expires end of next year. Nobody knows what will happen after Kyoto. This slide mein you can see that this is what your demand and supply scenario look like right now. It's almost the same. Demand and supply are almost equal. In the post-Kyoto regime, you have two scenarios. One scenario is that the Europeans will be the only ones who are going to push forward with a carbon emission reduction scheme. The Japanese are not going to be part of it. The Americans have already said that they're not, which means that they would do a 20% voluntary reduction, which would have this kind of a supply scenario. And demand is far lower than supply. So your prices would get hugely depressed than their present €8 levels. You have a second scenario where the Europeans decide to do 30% emission reductions, in which case demand and supply will match each other. But right now the situation is such that jo projects Kyoto ki expiry tak they get registered, there is only a market to procure those credits post Kyoto. No projects that are registered after Kyoto have buyers willing to pay anything for them.
Okay, and my last question is,
I think there are other
DOE. The Federal Ministry of Environment is the designated operating entity for the CDM project, and they are doing it at a very slow pace. So how can we get it fast? कि कंपनीज जो है वो इन्वेस्ट नहीं कर पा रही क्योंकि वो मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ एनवायरनमेंट का प्रोसेस बहुत डिले होता है.
I think other gentleman who spoke today said something very good, that 95% of wealth in Pakistan is created by the private sector. We should rely less on the government. In our company, we started doing this in 2006. Mashallah, we have about 35 projects, and we've done everything ourselves. We've only gone to the government for what is a mandatory statutory requirement to get host country approval. We don't expect them to do anything. All of the capacity building that we've done it on our own. All the client education that we've done that on our own. So I don't think the government is a bottleneck right now. If anything is a bottleneck, it is the economic condition in Pakistan. People's appetite to invest another 20 million in clean energy or something which is clean. The government I don't see as a big bottleneck, no. Ji sir. Sorry. Sir, ye pehle the. Just give him.
Are there any country-specific budgets for that in the Kyoto Agreement?
No. It's a voluntary scheme for developing countries. So Pakistan, India, China, Brazil, Mexico, these countries do it on a voluntary basis. So there are no quotas and there are no statutory requirements that you must produce this amount of carbon credit. Pakistan till 2006 had only one project.